welcome to In the News for September 22nd, 2023. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett, how are you doing this morning?
Did that sound at all like my voice? I don't know.
It did. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, is this Jeff as a recording today or...
So one of the new features of iOS 17 is this feature called personal voice. And the idea is that if you spend 15 minutes reading a bunch of sentences that come onto your screen, the iPhone will learn how to digitize your voice, which is interesting. It's something I remember years ago when Robert, you're in Chicago today. I remember when Roger Ebert of Chicago, the film critic, was losing his voice at the end. He had some very sophisticated technology that recreated his voice based upon all of his television appearances and stuff like that. Right. And so that he could use a keyboard and speak with his voice. It's amazing that everybody's iPhone now has that built in. All you do is spend 15 minutes talking to it and it learns your voice. And so now in the future, if for some reason I couldn't speak, I have a digital version of my voice built into the iPhone. It's only on my iPhone. It's not uploaded to Apple's servers or anything like that. So it's all private. And I can use it whenever I want. So for example, I could type a phrase and I could have it speak. And again, it doesn't sound exactly like me, but it does sound sort of like me. And I noticed that one of my my weather app, Carrot Weather, you can now have it every time you start the app, it will tell you the weather in your own voice, which is a little silly. But anyway, so that's just one of the bajillions of new features added from iOS 17. My goodness.
It's very nice to meet you, Digital Jeff. And maybe you could just do the whole podcast in Digital Jeff voice. I like the real Jeff.
We need a Digital Jeff and a Digital Brett. Stick them together, put them with AI, ChatGPT, see what they record. You never know what they may come up with, so.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, really quick, we just want to say thank you to SaneBox for sponsoring Digital Jeff today. We appreciate having them on board. We'll talk a little bit more about SaneBox in a moment. But not only are we talking about iOS 17 updates, we're already having an update to the update, Jeff. So we talked about the fact that iOS 17 was coming out on Monday, and I'm sure just like you, I upgraded immediately on Monday, got all the devices. I have been very happy. We'll talk about a little bit more in depth in just a moment, but was it just yesterday or maybe even today? Now it's 17.0.1, which is like an active security patch is already available. So if you've been working on iOS 17 this week, you might want to go and check the updates yet again.
Yeah, I did not expect to see updates on both Monday and Thursday.
Not this soon.
At the same time, it's nice that when Apple sees these actively exploited security flaws, and of course, that's the trigger language. That means this is not just theoretical. Someone out there is actually using it. Apple quickly gets updates out. And so yesterday on Thursday, they both updated iOS 16, and then shortly thereafter, they updated iOS 17 to 17.0.1. So, and then it's not just the iPhone, it's also the iPad and the watch and everything else. So, it's tough in this day and age that you need to already, frequently be updating and patching your devices to give yourself the most security. But that's the world we live in, I guess.
It is the world we live in. And again, we've talked about this many times already because it just seems like they're coming a little bit more often. And I know that there's a balance. Like everybody gets a little, unnerved. It's like, well, wait a minute, I just updated. I got to update again. And the answer is, well, yeah. I mean, first of all, what would be the alternative that Apple doesn't release these updates, right, Jeff? And I prefer the fact that they do because most of these like point updates go fairly quickly. Like it doesn't take a long time. Yeah, the phone has to reboot. The watch reboots, but they download fairly quickly and they get installed fairly quickly, and then you're continuing your life. I predict maybe in the future it'll even go even more smoother at some point. But again, I just prefer go ahead, and I'm glad that they were already on it. And again, just to also highlight, I think the fact that it's not like, this was iOS 17 for the general public, right? We've had developer betas, we've had public betas, we've been talking about that for weeks now. And so it's not like Apple just all of a sudden and realize this, right? I'm sure they've been planning this for a while as well. So anyway, go ahead and get updated. But let's get to the actual part of iOS 17 and the actual fun things that it does bring. There has been a lot. You linked to several stories today where people are just kind of highlighting their favorite features, the new features, the things that you should be trying, like the first things you should be trying in iOS 17. This one, I think, from CNET was really good. It's a good rundown of a list. A lot of people talking about the standby mode. I haven't tried that yet, but a lot of other good things that have been coming out in this, Jeff.
I tell you, standby mode is incredible. I have been using it for this week, and I'm going to do a full post on it on iPhone JD. Once I get ready.
Good.
Maybe not this week, but because I want to test a couple more things. But I mean, let me just give you a preview. Right. It's like having a whole new Apple device. Wouldn't it be fun if you just suddenly had another cool Apple device? And that's the way it is. And I say that because, right here, as I'm looking to you, Brett, I have my, I'm looking at a computer monitor. I'm actually at my office. So I've got two monitors side by side, and they're showing my work stuff and all that stuff. And then I have my iPad off to the side here with stuff too. But I now have a fourth screen, which is my iPhone. Normally, when I'm using my computer, my iPhone is just sitting on the side, not doing anything, not helping me in any way. Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'm charging it. Maybe I'm not charging it, but it's not really actively helping me. But now that's completely changed because I have my iPhone sitting right below my monitor. It's on a MagSafe charger. I'll talk about that in a second. But when I glance down on it, I see exactly what time it is on the left side, and on the right side I'm seeing a calendar that tells me here's my upcoming events at this time I have this, at this time I have this. And so just as I'm sitting here, I glance there and my iPhone is showing me all this useful information. It reminds me of how the Apple Watch can be pretty good at showing you information, but I have to actually lift my wrist. I'm just glancing at it. And with standby, you've got three different modes. I don't want to make the whole podcast about standby, but you have three different modes. You have the widget mode, you have a photo mode, which is just showing you photo albums, much like a digital photo frame. And then you have a clock mode that it's a full screen clock. But by far, the standout is that first one, the widget mode, because you can decide which widgets appear on the left or right. You can decide, do you want them to change automatically throughout the day, just like on an iPhone, or do you want them to just stick with the one that you prefer? And you can pick which ones are in the stack of the multiple widgets. And so for me, for right now, I have them not changing. I just have the ones that I put in there, and they never change unless I wanted to. But on the left time, I always have my clock. In fact, the one that I'm actually using is a really nice clock by the Widgetsmith app, which I've been using Widgetsmith, my iPhone, for a while. He has standby, and he's got this really nice clock that's super big numbers with like the hour at the top and the minutes at the bottom. So it could not be more clear. And then on the right side, sometimes I'm using the Widgetsmith calendar, which is nice. Sometimes I'm using Fantastical's standby widget. I'm just sort of switching between them. But it's just, as I'm working, my iPhone is giving me glanceable information that I need. Here's the time. Here's my next appointment. But for some people, it might be something else that's important to them. Stocks, or I see, like, in fact, what I should have on there right now is my the app that I use to track my deliveries, which is called Parcel. It has, in fact, I'm going to switch it right now. It has a little app that will tell me what's the status, and I can see right now.
Whatever could you be waiting on to be delivered today, Jeff?
My iPhone 15 Pro Max is out for delivery. Is that status? If it suddenly changes to it has been delivered, you might see me jump up from this podcast.
Oh, so, I remember we've recorded podcasts when you jumped up, Jeff, and you can do that again. You have full permission. Yes, sir.
Exactly. So again, just standby alone, it makes my iPhone more useful to me. I love it. It's great. I want to get a stand for my nightstand at home, but that's just one of the bajillions of new features. Let's keep going about some other ones.
Yeah. No, hang on, because I know that I have access to standby, but I got to tell you, I haven't tried it yet because I actually don't have a stand. Now, I don't think you have to have a stand for this, but okay. But the phone does have to be charging, right, in order for standby to be on. So somehow you've either got to plug it in or you've got it. So in other words, I could plug it in and just kind of prop my phone up, I guess, on something, and the standby would happen there. But that's not cool enough, though.
So, what I was doing earlier this week is I have previously reviewed this little thing that sits on top of my monitor, that it's a Belkin thing that has a magnet on it that holds your iPhone, and you can use it if you want your iPhone to be your camera, right? I just had it sitting here, and if you just sort of like stand it up there, it's sort of like a little stand. So any little stand that you have, or you can lean it up against something, it either has to be plugged in, or it has to be on a MagSafe charging. So the idea is if your iPhone display is going to be on it all the time. And I guess I should also mention that the reason it works so well for me is because I have an iPhone that supports having the screen on the entire time, which is that's the iPhone, the iPhone 14 Pro has that feature, the iPhone 15s, of course. So, if you don't have an iPhone with an always on screen, then you have to sort of tap it to see the information, which works, but it's not quite as ideal. But if you do have an iPhone with an always on screen, and if you have an easy way to keep it plugged in, whether it's a stand, with a cord or a MagSafe, then you're good to go.
Now I don't have to do anything because so I just plugged my phone in because I wanted. I'm so excited
and
to try this.
And you have to turn it on its side, so it's got to be landscape, and you need to let it sit there for about 4 or 5 seconds. And after it hasn't been moving,
I'm too impatient.
If you're moving around, if you're driving around town in a car, this is not going to work. But it has to be stationary, in landscape mode, and plugged in. And once those things are enabled,
it just came on.
There it is.
Welcome to standby. View helpful widgets.
And then if you hold down your finger for a second or two, you can customize it. So again, we could literally do a whole show in standby, and I tend to do at least 1 or 2 posts about it, both in terms of the software and some of the hardware to use. But it's great because it means I have this whole new feature. It's almost like, how Amazon sells these Echo devices that have a screen on them, right? Or imagine if you would, imagine a HomePod Mini that had a screen on it. That's basically what my iPhone is now. It's an Apple device that is always on, that's always showing me useful information. And then of course I pick it up and I can use it as an iPhone, but when I'm done using it as an iPhone, I stick it back there, and now it's being this second type of Apple device that's really useful to me. It's really cool.
I'm so glad you talked about it because now, I'm trying to figure out something I can prop my phone up on. That is so amazing. I can see now why you're so excited about this on there.
Yeah.
I've got a simple clock. I've got the temperature and everything. Okay, like you said, you're going to post on this, so we'll definitely be talking about standby mode later. But I'm so glad you mentioned that because I just hadn't had a chance and an opportunity to plug that in, but that is absolutely amazing. Okay, we'll move on because you're going to post about this and I want to talk about standby a little bit more, but maybe next week I'll have a stand, and of course in your post I expect and anticipate you'll talk about the stands on there as well. What else in iOS 17 do you want to cover, Jeff? There's so much, really.
So right there on the screen issue, the post that you're showing right now, it talked about how autocorrect in messages is vastly improved. What you'll now see is not only is autocorrect better, and it's noticeably better, but when you're typing, like if I start to type a word, what I've typed so far, of course, appears on the screen as you would expect, but then in sort of a grayed out mode, you can see the rest of the word that it wants to put there. And sometimes it's even like 2 words. And so like for my last name, if I start to type RIC, it's going to show Richard, like the rest of the word Richardson there, that I can just hit the space bar and have it autocomplete. And sometimes it's even the rest of the sentence. So it's not only it works better, but it's faster. That's a really nice feature in it. And on a quick related note, I've noticed that just quickly, but I feel like the dictation that I've done so far this week is a little more accurate. It seemed like it's doing a little bit something else, or maybe even offering some autocorrect on the dictation, but in a similar kind of a fashion with the autocorrect. I feel like the dictation has improved on there as well, which is really good. Really, really amazing stuff in here. I got to tell you, I was so excited when I got a phone call this week that I did not pick up and answer, Jeff, because I wanted to see the live voicemail. That was so amazing. I was actually on a train here in Chicago and I couldn't actually pick it up. I wouldn't be able to talk to anybody, but just seeing the live voicemail, like, okay, I can't take this phone call, but then I even got more excited because I was able to read a fairly good transcription. Wasn't perfect, but I got the gist of it. I knew exactly who it was, and I'm like, okay, I can file that away for later. But it was just so to have that, instead of like waiting for the voicemail to end, is it done? And did a little, item show up in my voicemail, and then I can go and maybe look at the transcript or listen to it. It was all right there on my lock screen, and that was really fantastic. I haven't tried that one out yet, but I look forward to trying that one out. Another silly little fun one that I can't wait to use is that in addition, your Photos app can automatically recognize people's faces. And then you can create an album of like, these are all my pictures of my son. These are all my pictures of my wife or whatever. But one of the new features is that on your phone and your iPad, etc., it will recognize pictures of pets. Now, I will tell you, the reason I haven't tried the feature yet is that I'm not ready. When you first update to iOS 7, you need to keep your devices plugged in, and you really need to keep them plugged in all night long. And it goes through and it processes your pictures. And since I've got like 50,000 plus pictures, it's going to take many, so far it's been almost a week and it hasn't gotten there yet. But whenever it finishes processing pictures, as I understand it, when I open up the Photos app, like I'm on my iPad right now, and I see that there's a tab called People. But whenever it's finished processing, that's going to change. Instead of saying people, it's going to say people and pets. And once that happens, then I can go through and it will be able to say, here's your dog, and you can say, this is, my current pet, the cat that I used to have. And again, it's a silly little thing, but it's another cool little feature that they have. The grocery list and reminders is neat because, they've always had like a grocery list as a built-in reminders thing. But now when you add items to it, it will sort them based upon where the items are located in the grocery store. And, I don't go to the grocery store as much as my wife does. And so sometimes I'll forget, where is this going to be? But as long as I just have the item in there, it's going to say, okay, this is Jeff, the bananas are in the produce section. Okay, thank you very much. Those sorts of things that automatically sorts it. But, that's really what iOS 17 is for me. There are some big features like standby, but it's really more of these little bitty quality of life throughout the scope of the operating system. One that's both on the iPhone and the iPad and the HomePods, and I guess even the AirPods too, is that instead of saying, hey, she shall not be named, you can take out the hey, and you can just say SIRI. And you may say,
it works.
What's the big difference? What's the big difference? You're just taking out the hey. Well, you know what? You're right. It's only taking out one syllable, one word. But for me, the difference is when I say, hey, you know who, comma, I always pause before giving my command. Under the new system, when you take out the hey, you can just say the name, SIRI, and then your command. And so not only are you cutting out a word, but you're actually cutting out a pause. And it sounds totally silly, but in my experience, it actually is faster.
It works.
So my home, and you have to enable this feature. I don't think it's on by default. So like for my HomePods my HomePod minis at home, I had to go in and turn it on that you could accept either hey, SRI or the regular one. But once you turn it on, I find it faster. And again, is it life-changing that I've saved myself a second or two? No, but it's a quality of life improvement, and it's one of many, many, many.
I agree. I didn't think that was going to be that big of a deal. And I think actually when you upgrade to iOS 17, I remember there was a splash screen there.
Oh, you know what? There was an option. You're right.
Yeah. And they said like, you don't have to hey anymore. You can just go in. But it's just, I don't know if it's just psychological or not, but you're right. It seemed like it was just faster, and it just seemed like that it was a little bit more responsive on that. Hey, okay, so I have a question on, I haven't tried this yet, even though my iPhone was trying to tell me, set up your contact poster, right? So in other words, this is a picture and the name for yourself that the people that I call will see of me, if that makes sense. I think I'm making it more complicated than it really is. But you're setting up a contact photo. I got to tell you though, Jeff, I was a little hesitant because I will call, family and friends, and I might have one picture of myself that that maybe is a little bit more informal that I don't mind that they see. But then I stopped myself because I said, well, sometimes I call, professional contacts, and I maybe want a little bit more of a formal picture on that contact. Is it possible, do you know that, can you change the contact photo? I stopped myself from setting that up because I just didn't want one picture to be shown, to everybody. And I don't know if I can customize that or not.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you choose a single photo for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you choose, that's what the other person sees.
Okay.
I'm actually curious, Brett, if you don't mind a live test, although you and I'm sure you're on mute right now, but if I call your cell phone right now, I have mine set up. Can you just look at the screen of your iPhone and just tell me? I've just tapped on your number. So are you seeing on your screen right now when it starts to ring like a full screen Jeff Richardson picture?
Hang on. It looks like, I think I sent you the voicemail.
That's right, because you're in the do not disturb mode. Of course, that makes sense. So I should have started talking.
No, there you are. I saw it. Yes,
and it was a big screen.
No, so it was your picture. I did see it. Yes, sir.
And so I was able to choose a full screen picture, so the entire length of the iPhone. I could choose the font that it had my name. I could choose whether it said Jeff Richardson, Jeffrey Richardson. I could choose the color of the font, so it's like silly little things, but you can make a little contact card that appears in a way that you think is nice. So for example, the picture that I showed you, I was wearing a blue shirt, so I used a blue font for Jeff Richardson because it just seemed like it sort of matched.
I saw that.
And I mean, it's totally silly, but you can just set up those things, and that way when you call somebody else, they will see it's you, and see it's you based upon however you want to be seen. If you want to be seen as being at the beach, or if you want to be seen as standing at Apple Park, like the picture you're showing right now, whatever you want. If you want to be wearing a business suit, it would be interesting if you could have different pictures, as you just indicated, but it's nice that you can sort of choose. So it's
and again, just quickly, I got to figure this out a little bit more too, because I know that my wife, she upgraded. No, I don't know if she upgraded her phone. I believe she did, but I know for a fact that she did not go set up a contact poster. But when she calls me now, Jeff, it is the picture that I had associated with her in the contacts. Does that make sense? Okay. And so that's what shows up. Now it's a little wonky that, it's blurred a little bit because, obviously it doesn't fit the parameters. It's a little circle or maybe a little square as opposed to like a full portrait picture. But anyway, I want to look into that a little bit more, and it had like a default font, and it's lovely because I can look down there now, and instead of it just saying my wife's name at the top, it has her name, but it has her lovely picture on there as well. And it really was cool that it shows up. But yeah, I want to experiment with the contact poster just a little bit more, which is good.
There's so many new features that you and I are going to be talking for months about. I know. New cool features. So go ahead.
Well, one last thing quickly that you mentioned was this article from Dan Moren about downloadable
maps,
or I guess it's officially called offline maps, right? Where you can download a map, which is really neat.
Yeah, and I've tried that one. So if you want to do it, the way that you do it is you go into your Maps app and type the name of a city. So for example, I typed New Orleans, Louisiana. And then once you tap it, you'll see a little option onto the side of the word New Orleans, and it'll say, like, do you want to download a map of this city? And then once I hit yes, there's a square, like a rectangle on the screen, and by default, it just had like the main city of New Orleans and like the main suburbs, but you can pinch in and out. So for example, I didn't just want the part of New Orleans that's below Lake Pontchartrain, which is the big lake here, but I also wanted what we call the North Shore on the other side, because if there's ever a place that I might have a bad cell phone coverage, it might be up there. So you decide how big of an area you want to include, and it will tell you based upon this much area, it's going to take up this much space in your phone. And it's very, very small. It was, for me, it was like 200K. And so then it downloads the map, which just takes a minute. And then you have an option that it can continuously update, because of course the maps are improved over time, right? So you want to keep it up to date. But the idea is that now I have a downloaded map. So if I'm driving around and I lose my cell phone coverage, well, my GPS is still going to work, but because the map is downloaded, not only does it know where I am, but it can show the map of where I am. And so I think this is a great feature. If you're traveling to another country and you're not sure if you're going to have cell phone coverage, I'm going to go to Milan, Italy. So let me download the entire city of Milan, stick it on my iPhone, and now I don't have to worry about not having cell phone coverage. I can still see where I am while I'm there. So it's not something you're going to use every day, but it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, iOS 17, so much more. We'll stop there because we need to talk about the iPhone 15, which I don't have yet. You don't have quite yet because you haven't jumped up from your seat. But
actually,
there are some.
I just received it. I see that it's actually now in my office. So it's sitting in my mailroom as we speak right now. I don't have it. I will. You want to pause?
That is so great. I do want to pause for a second.
Okay, let's pause this recording. We will be right back through the magic of technology. So, through the magic of technology, Brett, I am now back, and I am peeling open the strip
dun, 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 dun.
For the live unboxing.
The live unboxing. This is such great timing. Woohoo!
And there we go.
Look at that. Okay, so tell us and tell everyone which model did you get?
So for the first time ever, I have gone for the big model. I've thought about this for many years, and I decided this year I was really interested to try the 5X zoom on it. And so as I'm peeling the top off of my brand new iPhone. So this is interesting. I mean, I can instantly see the difference in size. It's a little bit taller.
Yeah.
A little bit wider.
But so, the weight. Yeah. How does it feel?
Okay. That is an excellent question, Brett. And I tell you.
Yes.
The big one should weigh more. And in fact, technically, I know it does weigh more. But as I go back and forth between my left and my right hand,
yes,
this is really interesting. The iPhone 15 Pro Max feels lighter than my iPhone 14 Pro.
I've heard that.
That doesn't make sense, but I think it has something to do with the distribution of the weight or something like that.
Yes.
That is bizarre.
Well,
it feels
titanium.
like it's actually, it feels like it's thinner. It's not thinner. They're the exact same width, but it feels just because of the way the weight is distributed in the titanium. That is really interesting. Okay, so this was a good year for me to upgrade because even though I'm getting a bigger phone, I'm not getting a noticeably heavier phone. That's really interesting. Having said that, I can instantly feel the difference. You know, I know so much what it feels like.
Of course,
the width of an iPhone that's the smaller size of my hand. And this is the first time in my life, except for being in an Apple store, that I've held the bigger one, and it's a little bit bigger in my hand. So that's going to definitely be something to get used to. It's not bad.
I was going to say, it's not going to be that bad. You'll get you at a couple of days. You'll be fine with that. And
I put it in my shirt pocket. Actually, it mostly fits in my shirt pocket. So obviously, I'm going to be playing with it this weekend. But this will be cool. So the real thing that I'm interested in, though, is the zoom lens on it, because of the 3 lenses, one of them, of course, is instead of a 3x lens, it's a 5x lens. And you know, I've been reading about this a lot this week, and one of the things that excites me about it is that when you think about it, there's not a huge difference between 2x and 3x. Yes, it is more zoomed in, but it's only incrementally so. But there's a pretty substantial difference between 2x and 5x. And one of the things that I know we're going to talk about the Daring Fireball review, but another thing that I linked to today, Brett, was some pictures that Jason Snell had posted yesterday. And if you want to pull them up on the screen, he's interesting because he's looking at a hotel window, because he's in Memphis right now, and he's looking at a hotel window at a store across the street. And when you use the 1x or the 2x lenses, you can see the store across the street. But then when you switch to the 5x lens, you can literally read the words on the signs in front of the store that you can't do otherwise. It's just a different type of picture. And so my thinking of it is, you know, for the times in life that I want to zoom, let's go ahead and really zoom. You know, let's not be timid about our zoom. Let's have a real zoom.
Zoom all the way.
We know that the zoom lens it's not going to be quite as detailed as the regular lens. You're going to get a better quality picture with the regular lens for many, many different reasons. You know, the f-stops are different and the quality is different, but things are going to be bigger. And so if you want to get close to something, you don't want to do a digital zoom because that's going to be all blurry. You know, go ahead and do it for real with the 5x lens. So, you know, again, you've just seen me unbox it. Obviously, I haven't used it yet, but I'm excited about it for this possibility. So the question for me is going to be over the course of the next weekend, of the course of the next year, you know, does the value of having the 5x lens, and also it's got a bigger battery since it's a bigger phone, so I can go longer on a charge. Are those two advantages? How are they going to compare to the larger size? And then the other thing is just having a bigger screen when I'm like looking at my emails or if I'm reading a web page. It's going to be, I mean, it's not a huge difference in screen, but it's a big enough difference. Am I going to find that more enjoyable, almost like it's a little mini iPad? Or am I going to say, hey, I don't really notice a difference at all?
Yeah. Well, you referenced the John Gruber Daring Fireball review, and right off the bat, he says he's got 4 reasons to consider upgrading, and he puts titanium first, above the camera. So those Jason Snell pictures I thought were absolutely fantastic there, and that really brought home how powerful that camera is. But I know as soon as I heard about the titanium and even that weight aspect, my 14 Pro to me feels so heavy. And I think I said this last week, especially when I pick up my wife's, iPhone 12, and I'm just like, wow, my 14 Pro is so much heavier. And so I want to stay with the Pro model. I'm not going max like you, but I was so happy to hear about the titanium, and exactly what John Gruber says here, that, he talks about, he goes, don't shy away from admitting it, right? But gadget lust is real. People are drawn to exquisite objects and premium materials. And so his argument is the titanium is it looks really, really good. People want the most exciting thing. But I thought he had a really good discussion in here about the fact that titanium is not new to Apple, but they finally have maybe gotten closer to perfecting it, certainly for the mobile aspect in here. I really thought he did a good job writing about that.
It feels really nice in the hand. And you know what else is nice? Not only the substance, but the side of the phone. On my iPhone 14 and my prior phones, it's not that it's a sharp edge, but there, you could definitely feel that corner, whereas it's a little bit more muted with the this is just not the material. This is just the case design. And it feels really pleasant in the hand. I tell you what, it's I remember years ago when the iPhone, was it between the 4 and the 5, or between one of those generations, when they added Johnny Ive talked about the chamfered edges, and I had to look up the word chamfer to see what it means. But that it wasn't just a sharp 90-degree angle, but it was sort of like a, cut in a little bit. It's not chamfered, it's actually more rounded, but it feels super, super nice. That's cool. Very cool.
Is there any kind of a texture on the surface at all, Jeff? Is it like, I don't know, when I hear titanium and the way that they've had all these little bits and pieces flying around, I almost feel like it, would it be like almost like a matte feel? I mean, what does that feel like?
It is. And I tell you, because the iPhone 14 Pro, of course, it's got sort of the shiny stainless steel on the side. I wouldn't call it slippery, but it's a tiny bit slippery. This is the reason that I would often use a case if I was traveling, although I normally don't use a case day to day. It has a matte finish, so of course it's not as shiny. It does feel a tiny bit different. It's not grippy or anything like that. It's not like it's tacky or grippy, but I think that I wouldn't be surprised if there was a very, very, very tiny reduction in slipperiness. And then, of course, I showed off last week that I had the case that I ordered.
You already have the case.
I'm just sticking there in the fine woven case, and fits like perfectly. It fits nice, as you would expect. I'm going to be very curious to see how this fine woven stands up over time. There was an article on The Verge this week that said that if they scraped a bunch of keys next to it, they got it messed up. Of course, if you scrape a bunch of keys next to a leather case, it's going to mess that up too. But
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you have the black titanium color.
I went for the black because I've just always preferred the black iPhone. But I will say that a lot of people say, and one of the most popular colors is the natural. So it really sort of looks like you would expect titanium to look, sort of that sort of like I don't know, like a handgun gray sort of. That's a good looking look too. But the black looks great.
I think you had a link to a story today. I can't find it right now, but Tim Cook prefers the natural titanium.
That's what he chose. Yes, exactly. So if you're
but apparently there's natural, there's white, there's blue and black. But if you heard Jason Snell talk about this, it's really just different shades of gray.
It's all gray.
Like it's not like that they really had a whole lot of the color spectrum here, but it's like you can get gray, a little bit less gray, a little bit more gray, and really, really gray, which is what you have on the black side. But it sounds like you're already you're happy with the color, though. It sounds like, just even looking at it right off the bat there.
Oh yeah, I mean, I agree. It's not black. There was a time years ago that they had a jet black iPhone. I forget which model that was.
Yes.
This one is. It was almost like a piano black, like a grand piano black. This one is it's a dark gray. It's a really, really dark gray.
Very,
sometimes
very dark.
Apple calls this space gray. It's that sort of a dark gray. But I think it looks really good. Yeah.
Okay, so real quick, going through the rest of this and John Gruber's review here, he starts with the titanium, and he titanium is better functionally, it's stronger, just as importantly, it's just really cool. Then he goes into the camera side, which I thought, again, Jason Snell's little post that he did of the 3 pictures, I mean, I don't even know if you have to have any words with that. Just being able to see those 3 pictures side by side is really great. I got to tell you, though, I've gotten lost in all the discussions here, people talking about the 48 megapixel and it's 12 versus 2412, just all kinds of craziness in there, Jeff. But I would like for you to explain that, if not today, by next week when you've been playing with yours.
Yeah, let me say something about that. When I bought the 14 Pro last year, I was excited about it having a 48 megapixel lens because of the detail that it could provide. But as you and I discussed a little bit last week, the reality was, because it only shot 48 in RAW mode, and I very rarely got into RAW mode because it's so complicated, I didn't take advantage of it as much as I wanted to. The new cameras, and this is the same no matter what kind of iPhone 15 you have, the regular, the Plus, the Pro, and the Pro Max, they all take advantage of slightly improved cameras. They all have 48 megapixel lenses, but they all create a 24 megapixel image. And what happens is it uses basically half of the 48 megapixels to create your image of 24, which is still twice as big as it used to be last year. So your picture sizes will have twice as many pixels, but then it uses the other 12 at the top and the bottom to sort of adjust the sort of like the HDR, the dimensions of it, the richness of the color. And so as a result, Although I had assumed with this new iPhone, much like my iPhone last year, when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, I'm going to want to be taking 48 megapixel pictures the whole time. I actually don't think that that's going to be the case. I'm going to do some samples, but I think the sweet spot is to keep it in the standard 24 megapixel mode, because what Apple is doing is they're using the extra megapixels not to make the picture more detailed, but to make the picture come alive more, more deep,
like more vivid,
more vivid. Exactly. Now, of course, you can switch it to 48 megapixel mode whenever you want. And there may be times where if I'm taking a picture that I want to have some good details in, I might take both, right? I might just take the normal picture, hit one button to switch into 48 megapixel mode, and then take a second picture, and I can decide later on my computer which one I want to keep. But it looks like the 24 megapixel mode is really the nice one, which also gets back to when you take a picture with the zoom lens, the 5x lens, it doesn't have a lot of that same, that's one of the reasons why it's not going to be quite as good of a picture. And even if you the standard mode picture side by side to the 48 megapixel mode, my guess is the standard mode picture is going to often look better, maybe with the exception of zooming into those details. So anyway, they've done some fascinating things. And what's the most interesting about all of it is we're so past the days where taking good picture was just about the physics of the camera, the type of lens you have. Now we are fully into this age of computational photography, where what is done with the picture afterwards is so much more important than taking it. Because of course, taking a picture on an iPhone is not a picture. What it's actually is, it's a series of pictures that are taken in rapid succession, far faster than you can notice it, that are instantly processed, and they are merged together to create the best overall picture. As opposed to, when you and I were growing up, Brett, and we just had like a little snap and shoot camera, it was just a picture, and if it was either a good one or a bad one, nothing you could do about it. But now the iPhone is merging all these things to get the highs and the lows, and to bring out the shadows and bring out the details. It's smart.
This one article that you linked to on PetaPixel today,
this is a great one.
I love just the first line here, and I think this sort of underscores, like you explaining all of this, which is great because you can understand it. But he says here at the beginning, Apple rides a delicate line with its iPhone camera system. On one hand, you want to keep it as simple as possible, right? Just to your point, I just want to pull out a phone to capture the moment when the kids are doing something. But you got to also be able to provide some of these other tools for, professional photographers. And we've been talking about how professional photographers on a hike, or they've going out and they're using it, or even for video or for movies, for crying out loud. And, there are those options in there. If you really wanted to dig deep and turn on some of that stuff, and the log and the raw and the heaf, whatever it is these days. But it also works great just to make sure that you can capture, a dog running down the street or something along those lines. And, it just, that, like I said, this article really just kind of, I think, brought that out to me a little bit. Like, oh yeah, when we talk about all these cameras, they really are trying to straddle, I think, the broadest general audience that they can. And it seems like they're doing a pretty good job with it so far.
Yeah.
Okay, so quickly on the John Gruber, we talked about titanium, the camera. What are the other things? Oh, the action button. Oh, I can't wait until you start. He loves it. He thinks it really works out great. I at first was a little hesitant about it when I saw them announce it, but now that I think about it, especially reading John's article here, it really takes some time for me, especially if you got a case on there, to like put my fingernail in and to switch it off. I'm really excited to try out the action button on that, which you can set not just to be able to silence the phone, but to basically anything that you want it to be. There's a few built-ins, I know, but then of course using shortcuts. What do you think you might be using yours for, Jeff? Have you thought about it yet?
I have. My first observation is, as I'm comparing my old phone to the 15, the action button is the same size as the switch from before. But that actually means it's a very small button. When you go to the side of your phone, your fingers know the size of the volume button. You know how like it's a little bit bigger than your finger, but that action button is tiny. I guess I'll get used to it over time. But I mean, that makes sense because you don't want it to be that much bigger than the switch used to be. But I just wasn't expecting that. I think I'm going to start by putting mine on the camera, because for me, of the things that I want my iPhone to do quickly, I think jumping into camera mode is probably the one the most. I'm at home and my kids are doing something silly. I want to jump into the camera mode as fast as possible. And I know that there's other ways to jump into camera mode, like swiping on the screen and stuff.
Gruber talks about them.
Yeah. And I think, as John points out, though, if you're actually using your iPhone, well, you can't just swipe on the screen. You have to turn it off. And that's I like the idea of jumping directly into the camera mode. So for sure, that's what I'm going to start with. with. But I will tell you, the idea
Okay.
of connecting the action button to a shortcut and then letting me control what that shortcut is, which is infinite. It could be anything. It wouldn't surprise me if months from now I have found some really useful shortcut and I have that assigned to it. But today, once I start to set this thing up, I'm definitely going to start with the camera and see how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the last thing that John mentions, of course, is USB-C. So gone. You are done with lightning cables now, Jeff. Well, maybe mostly, right?
Yeah. The USB-C connector at the bottom of this thing is just ever so tiny bigger than the lightning connector, which is interesting. I think of them being the same size, but it's just a slight bigger USB-C. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's going to affect my everyday life. You're right. I mean, I'll be using one type of cord instead of the other. Maybe I won't need those lightning cords as much, but I'll still need them a little bit because of like my AirPods for now. I guess there will come a time there will come a time years from now when I won't be using it. But, even with my AirPods, I might start charging them on MagSafe more often, especially now that I'm using stands to keep my iPhone in standby mode. So who knows? Maybe I will get to the point where I never touch. I look forward to the day when my lightning cords can go with my 30-pin connectors in the closet, in the museum of ancient cables, along with my SCSI cords and everything else from days of yore. But we shall see.
Well, again, I know we've talked about this before, but especially when I travel, like my MacBook Pro is all USB-C. That's how I plug it in because I don't bring I even have a MagSafe on the MacBook Pro, but I typically just travel with USB-C because my iPad Pro uses USB-C. So I was bringing lightning cables mostly to charge my iPhone, but also, as we've talked about, my AirPods Pro and my MagSafe chargers. So it doesn't sound like you have upgraded to the newer AirPods Pro 2nd generation with USB-C.
I have
not.
But what I have
they're
done,
coming. Yes.
What I have done is the same thing as you. My existing AirPod Pros are now using the new firmware. And in fact, I'm curious to hear from you because I think you've done this even more than I have, Brett. It used to be that there was the two modes. There was either transparency mode where you could hear the world around you, and then there was noise cancellation mode where you're not hearing the world around you. But now there's this new in-between mode. What
Jeff,
do you think? What's it called?
I love it. It's called adaptive noise or adaptive sound. I can't remember exactly. It's adaptive something.
Okay.
Here, you find it because I will tell you, I have Bionic Ears now. I love it. So I'm in Chicago, right? So I usually take the train back and forth. Well, that thing is very loud. So what would I do when I was traveling on this, Jeff? I would put my AirPods in and I would go into noise cancellation mode. And it was great because it tuned out everything, the train, but it also tuned out like the announcements of where I was, or, if the driver came. Right. Exactly. Or similar, like on a flight. I don't know if I did it coming here yet. But, I want to hear the pilot if he's going to make an announcement, but I don't want to hear the roar of the engines kind of a thing. I got to tell you, I'm still experimenting with this because it's just been a few days. But, Jeff, so far, I feel like it's like my ears will automatically adjust as I'm walking around. So the way I've done it before is I had transparency and noise cancellation. And I would click and hold, the little stem of my AirPod to switch between those two. Right. And that was great because I know if I'm getting to the train, I'm going to click and hold and switch to noise cancellation. But then that was it. Like if I needed to hear somebody, I would have to either reach up and click and hold again to switch to transparency or just rip an AirPod out of my ear. Right. Neither of which happens fast enough for me. And it was just like, well, I wish there was a little bit of an easier way to do this. I feel like now, and I'm still working with this a little bit, but I put them both in, Jeff. I switched to adaptive
audio.
Adaptive audio. Thank you. I switched to adaptive audio, and I'm walking down the street. And as I'm walking down the street, I can hear the cars a little bit more than maybe what I would want to. But as soon as I start walking to the train and the noises get louder, I feel like the noise cancellation, it's very gradual. It just kind of swoops in, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I would want it to do. Like that's, instead of it just being a drastic switch into complete noise cancellation, I just feel like it gradually just closes out the additional noises. And then when I get off the train and I start walking through the streets, then I can hear a little bit more. It's a little more transparent because I'm walking down the street. I want to see if a car, is, turning. I want to hear if a car is coming up, that kind of a thing. I am thrilled with it. Now, I did leave on the option to click and hold my stem, but now instead of switching between transparency and noise cancellation, it's 3 options. I can do transparency because I still want to be able to at times to just say no, full transparency, right? Like when I'm jogging down the street, I don't want it to be adaptive. I want it to just stay on transparency mode. And there are times that I want it to stay in noise cancellation. But I normally now will want it to be an adaptive audio. And the great thing that I think Apple did here, I'll just say, is when I click and hold, in the past, you know this, it will give you a little audio cue when you switch between noise cancellation and transparency. And one was like boo-doo-doo-doo, and the other was like doo-doo-doo-doo. Like you could tell which one was which. Now there's this, I think even John Gruber calls it the joyful noise when you switch into adaptive audio. And it really is nice to have that audio cue because I know, pretty much I can tell exactly what mode that I'm in without having to pull up, normally if I needed to do that, sometimes I have to pull my iPhone up and go into like my Bluetooth settings and see what is it in or on my Mac. But I got to tell you so far, I was very doubtful about this when they saw it because we talked about this in the summer when Apple announced it at the Worldwide Developers Conference. I was doubtful. I'm like, okay, I don't know how well that can work, but it works very good so far. And I anticipate once Apple, gets some feedback from this, it's going to continue to work even better. And the great thing is it works on our current versions of the AirPods Pro 2 Lightning edition.
Yeah. So I played with the adaptive mode enough to see that I think I like it more than transparency. So right now I'm set up that I just switch between noise cancellation and adaptive. I'm just going to switch between those two because I don't think, anytime that I'm going to want to use transparency mode, I might as well just use adaptive mode for now. I'll change that. Right. But I haven't played around with it enough to say for sure that I like it. I want to stick with it for a few weeks. But the other new feature that the firmware provided that I have used a few times now is called the conversation awareness. And this is an interesting mode. It means that if you're in a noise canceling or pretty much any mode that you're in, if you're listening to a podcast or listening to music and suddenly your AirPods can sense that you're talking to somebody, it will lower the volume first a little bit and then more dramatically of what you're listening to so that you don't have to say, wait, let me pause. I can't hear you yet. It just takes care of it. And so I mentioned, I think on my blog today that I got into the elevator the other day. I was listening to a podcast and somebody asked me a question and then instantly my volume went down and I was talking with her and she and I talked for about, 5-10 seconds and we could hear each other. I could hear her just fine. And then after we finished talking about a second or two later, my podcast level just returns. It just comes on back up. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Now I've heard some people complain that like Jason Snell mentioned that he's walking his dog and he says, fetch Rover or something like that. He's like, I didn't really want my podcast volume to come down when I was just giving the dog a command. So I guess there's going to be some circumstances. And I heard somebody else say that they were in a noisy grocery store or a train station and it heard the voices around you and the iPods, it's just assumed the AirPods just assumed that they were talking to you when they really weren't. So it's going to have to improve over time. But I have to admit, so far the once or twice that I've used it, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is going to be because I tell you the way that I ran into this is that I had my AirPods on. I don't know if I was in full noise cancellation, probably in adaptive audio. So it was mostly noise cancellation and I was listening to music. I started singing along to the song and the AirPods thought, oh, well, you're having a conversation. So immediately
that's too funny.
It went out of noise cancellation. And I could hear so much more around me. And I'm like, no. I don't want to do that. I'm just humming along to a fun song. Don't go out of that. So that's the way that I expected it and anticipated. But similar to your experience in the elevator that you were describing, Jeff, that's sort of the way that I feel like that it works even with adaptive audio. I mean, it's kind of the similar technology, right? In the sense that if it does understand that maybe you are having a conversation, then it will, it'll lower the volume or it'll stop the audio. So far, again, I was very doubtful when they talked about this in the summer, but so far I have really been happy with it. I'm just, I think we're going to have more experiences with this a little bit more before we can be
Do you think it's possible that you were singing so off key that your AirPods thought there is no way in the world that he is actually singing right now? He must be having a conversation with somebody. No judgment.
We're going to stop the music. We're going to stop the music out of mercy.
Out of mercy, yes.
The people around. Oh, good. Okay, we'll talk more about that. But a couple of other things quickly that came out. How about the Apple Watch? The update to the Apple Watch, which was Apple Watch OS 10, right? Well, now 10.0.1 since I updated this morning here. Several fairly drastic updates. I think you had a post on this, right? You wrote about the I say drastic in the sense that the buttons aren't doing what my buttons did before. That was the biggest thing. Although I got to tell you, I feel like I've already over the last 4 days now gotten comfortable with the new way, Jeff. I thought it was going to be a lot more drastic, but at least for me personally, maybe because I knew some of these changes were coming up, so that it wasn't as much of a surprise. I definitely like the additional widgets. I definitely like the fact that I can jump to the different apps. The new watch faces are fantastic. I have caught myself a couple of times if I wanted to go and check my battery's percentage. Normally at the watch face, I would just, scroll up from the bottom. Well, that doesn't work quite the same way. It brings up those widgets. Anyway, it's taken just a little bit of work to it, but overall, I'm very happy with the Watch OS update.
Yeah, I haven't yet decided what I think about the new button assignments. Okay. You just have so much muscle memory that you swipe up to see the battery, and now I need to press the button on the side. So I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I understand that Apple has put a new emphasis on widgets in both the iPhone and the iPad and the Apple Watch, and they want to be more widget central. And I think I like that. But when you change the buttons, I need to adjust to that. But I will say that the thing you're showing on your screen right now, this article in GQ is so funny. There is this new watch, and it's the one that I'm using on my watch. It's the Snoopy watch face, and it's really it's fun. We've had an animated watch face before with some of the characters from Toy Story, and of course the Mickey Mouse and stuff. But the Snoopy one brings it to a whole new level. There are well over 100 animations. Every single time that I lift my wrist, I get to see another cute little Snoopy animation. And the article in GQ is really cute because they talked to the guy that developed it, who knew Charles Schultz and works there and is now in charge of this stuff. It's a lot of thought and design went to this watch face. And after a week or two, I'm sure I'll get bored with it and I'll switch off to it. But it is a very fun, nice new watch face. And, Snoopy has been on watches, he's been one of the iconic watch faces since the 60s and stuff like that. So it makes sense for, much like a Mickey Mouse watch is something that people, it means something in society. A Snoopy watch means something too. And so how fun to have a little animated Snoopy. I mean, I just look at my watch right now and I see Snoopy and Woodstock.
It's fun.
Snoopy's throwing Woodstock on a paper airplane, and I look at them again and they're jumping up. And they don't just do animations, they interact with the clock. And so depending upon where the minute hand is, Snoopy will jump up on the minute hand and he'll throw out a fishing rod and do stuff like that. It's very fun. So it's silly. It makes me happy.
Oh, it's got to make you happy. I didn't read the full article, but I heard somebody else talk about it on another podcast, and just the amount of time and love, literally the passion that went into this, to make it all those little details like you're talking about. I haven't tried the Snoopy watch face yet. The main reason, Jeff, is because with my Apple Watch Ultra, I was more excited about the new modular Ultra watch face, which came out. I changed to it immediately. And I don't think I can go back. I can't. They now finally are using every single space of the screen. I can have the seconds go around the outside, or I can actually have elevation on there. I think I have 7 complications on my watch face, Jeff.
Gracious.
It's fantastic. Plus the time, by the way. So it still tells the time. But I've got my date. I've got a calculator. I've got my timer. I've got the weather. I've got my compass, so I can jump straight to my compass. And then in the middle, like the other modular watch faces, you can have a fairly large type of widget. Right now I've got Flighty, because the Flighty app did have now finally an update for the Apple Watch, and that's fantastic nice update, to have in there. Normally I have my activity, but there's so much that I can put on there. I'm almost overwhelmed, but I love it. I welcome all of that information. So that was the other one. And you do have to have the Apple Watch Ultra in order to get that. I will tell you quickly on this. If you remember, the Apple Watch Ultra had I forget the name of the ultra specific watch face that they had, Jeff. But if you remember, on the Apple Watch, you could turn the digital crown on that new face and it would go all red. You remember what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. So it would kind of go into a night mode. Exactly. Well, guess what? The digital watch crown does not do that anymore. It almost has its own switching back and forth into night mode. And so the funny thing that I've noticed that if it is dark in the room, it'll go automatically into that night mode. The only thing that I have a beef with it so far is in the past, I would purposely, spin the digital crown to go into the night mode. Well, now if I wear a long sleeve shirt or if I have a suit jacket on, guess what? It covers up the watch, the Apple Watch face. And so when I pull my sleeve back to check the time, it's in night mode. Not that big of a deal, but it's like, well, wait a minute. No, I want the colors. I don't want the red face, the night mode. So just a little thing that I got to get over. And of course, it only works in those Apple Watch Ultra specific watch faces. But I'm very happy, both with the. I'll try the Snoopy eventually, just because people have been talking about it so much. But I also like the new modular Ultra watch face. Oh my goodness. Okay, phone. We haven't even talked about the iPad today. That's okay. We'll leave that for later because there's some really good stuff in there. And I know you got to be writing about that too with the interactive widgets and everything. We did the phone. We did the AirPods. We did iOS 17. TV, Apple TV. Let's not forget Apple TV OS. You got updated too. And the big news there, another column.
Yeah, I haven't even turned on my Apple TV yet this week. So when I go to watch TV tonight, I'll get to see the new screen.
The other thing that they announced, now we just have like a quick rundown here. If you need more iCloud space, you can now buy more than 2 terabytes, which used to be $9.99 a month. And now you can buy 6 terabytes for $30 a month or 12 terabytes for $60 a month. I admit, we upgraded to Apple One subscription, right? Quite a long time ago, Jeff. Probably because I remember you kept mentioning how great it was. Mm-hmm. We love it for all of the options that it gives. But the Apple One subscription comes with a 2 terabyte space. I don't think we're anywhere close to filling that up. So I don't really necessarily feel the need to upgrade, but I'm just wondering, you can get iCloud storage separately, but are they going to up our storage options in the Apple One subscription? I don't think anybody's mentioned that yet, or Apple hasn't said anything about that yet.
Yeah, I haven't even looked at the option. I'm sure there's a way that you could spend more money. I mean, I'm sure Apple will be happy to take my money and get more. Right. The last time that I checked, my family was using about 1.3 of the 2. So, I'm not going over it, but I'm not that far away either.
You're getting close.
So we'll have to see how that works.
Well, before we get into In the Know, let's quickly talk about SaneBox, our sponsor today. Thank you for hanging with the SaneBox. And even more so, thank you for the service that you provide, because I know we've talked about SaneBox quite a bit, and I get it almost every day. I am so thankful for me. The biggest thing that I still appreciate is the Sane News folder, Jeff. So I didn't realize, I think, before SaneBox, how many like general newsletters that I subscribe to in my email. Because over the years, you just say, "Oh, that's a great, interesting product. I want to know when you get something more." There's like Weber grills. Yeah, I want to know when you send a recipe. New York Times. Sports. When I buy something from somebody, they usually put me on their email list. And in the past, I didn't ever want to unsubscribe from some of these newsletters because I would like to every once in a while. I just want to know what's going on, but I didn't want to put them in spam. And so I would just leave them in my main inbox, and then I would just have to filter through them and delete them and take the time to maybe delete or look through them quickly while I really wanted to get to the email that really mattered. Yeah. Well, now with SaneBox, it's just so much easier for me, Jeff. I'm so happy that even without me interacting with anything, the newsletters all get shuttled into the Sane News folder. And it's just so great. I know that it's not getting deleted. I know that it's still there. And maybe once a day, I'll go through and check the Sane News folder while I'm checking my regular inbox, maybe once an hour. But I know that all those newsletters are getting shuttled over into the Sane News folder. And so at the end of the day or so, I can just go directly into that Sane News folder, and I just will look at those emails. Yeah, I don't need that. Don't need that. Ooh, I want to see what they're talking about. That's an interesting thing. But in those times that I check my regular inbox, it's just so much quicker because I don't have to wade through all of the newsletters and stuff that I get all the time. So thank you, SaneBox, for the Sane News folder. I know I've talked about this before, but it just continues to be my absolute favorite feature that they have, and pretty much means that I can't ever get rid of SaneBox from this point forward.
Yeah, and the thing about the newsletters too is that like when you talk about saving them that you're going to wait till this weekend to read them, they sort of junk up your inbox, right? Because like you might have like a newsletter and then an email that matters, and then two more newsletters, and then two more emails that matter, and another. And so when you're looking at your inbox, it's just sort of like it's confusing. Like, is something unread because I need to read it and act upon it, or is something unread because I'm saving it for this weekend? Whereas when SaneBox automatically moves that for you, it just makes it work so much better. So that's what I like about it. I mean, I have it set up on two accounts right now, my iPhone JD and my Gmail. And when I look at the inbox, instantly it's like I'm only seeing the things that matter, and then later on I will go look at Sane News or Sane Later or something else. So yeah, it's hard to describe, but it just makes you much more efficient. It allows you to get in and out more quickly, and it allows you to know right now I'm in the mode where I want to look at emails that are for me, and then right now I'm in the mode where I want to look at newsletters that I subscribe to that were sent to me. And it's just, I love that you can quickly jump to those modes. So I highly recommend SaneBox. Any of our listeners that haven't tried it out yet, you should at least just try it for a week or two and just see what you think.
I think I've said this
go back. Yeah.
Right. I've said it before quickly. It's literally like having my own personal assistant just for email, my email assistant. Right. Yeah. Because it's like, they're just saying, okay, Brett, we know you've got a lot of email coming in, but here's the ones you need to look at now. And then you can go and get the others later. But yeah, for anybody that hasn't looked at it, you can go to sanebox.com/in-the-news, all one word. We've got a special page set up there at sanebox.com/in-the-news. You can go get a free trial. And then once you realize that you can't do without it, just like me, I can't do without my Sane News folder now. You can sign up for one of the subscriptions. They're really cute. How they have it's called Lunchbox and Dinner. You can sign up for a subscription. And if you sign up through the link that we're giving you here, you can get $25 towards a SaneBox subscription. So SaneBox, SaneBox.com/in-the-news. So thank you, SaneBox, for being a partner with us and helping us out on In the News podcast. And thanks everyone for listening to us as well. In the know. All right. I thought quickly we would just pick our favorite iOS 17 feature. The ones that we already haven't gone through and mentioned. And I will pick quickly the small, to your point that you said, the small but amazing little tiny improvements to the Safari browser on my iPhone. I don't know that I was aware that they were going to make some improvements. I know they talked about the number one thing was profiles, right? And I set this up this morning. And I liked it. I don't know exactly how I'm going to use it, but I can go in and set up a profile for my Safari so that I can go, for example, have a business profile, right? These are just some of the links that I want to maybe, have open, or tabs that I want to have open from like a business perspective, because this is something I'm reading, maybe a law review article or something else. But then I can have a personal profile in Safari so that it would just be tabs open, that things that I want to research, or, things fun things maybe that I just don't want kind of, getting intermingled with my serious tabs. I can have my personal tabs. So that's number one, the profiles. But I think even more, the more immediate thing that I noticed when I went into my Safari browser on the iPhone is we talked about the fact not too long ago when they made the changes to a lot of stuff, like the tabs are at the bottom. I am so much muscle memory now where I can just flip around on the bottom. And if I want to create a new tab, I just basically put my thumb in the bottom URL box and then flip up, right? And then all of my tabs now come into a visual component. And I love that. If I'm in the tabs, though, I don't know that this was available before. Maybe it was, but I can now just swipe left to right on my tabs at the bottom, Jeff, and I can go to my different tabs and it just pulls them in. I think that might have been available before, but for whatever reason, it just became more apparent to me. Like I didn't even think about it. And I just saw that and I'm like, okay, well, I can now flip back and forth on there. And then when I flip up and see all the tabs, it actually lists the number of tabs that I have open down here at the bottom, which is now 35. That's a lot. But it gives me the ability then that I can go into some of the other options there if I wanted to go into the private mode, for example, or if I wanted to have a different tab group. So that was a lot there, but really just the improvements in iOS 17 that came for the Safari web browser are really great. I like the fact that you can go and create even private browsing mode now, and it will lock the private browsing mode now with your Face ID. So that wasn't available before, but that's something new that if you wanted to go into private mode, then you can lock it now, and then you can only open it with your Face ID, and you can flip back and forth between that there at the bottom on there as well. So that's my general pick, my favorite things, because I'm realizing I really do a lot in Safari on my phone. Yeah. Just for general research or just checking on things, or, trying to win a bar bet or something. I mean, I'm always going into Safari to check on those things. So I appreciate just the little tiny incremental updates on there.
So here's my tip today, and it's a photography tip for the camera app in iOS 17. I have noticed over the years that many times I will take a picture and it's a nice picture, and then I go home and I look at my computer, and when I look at the picture on the big screen, I can see that it's a little tilted to the left or to the right. Often you'll notice it if there's like something that should be completely flat in the picture, like right. A picture frame. You're like, oh, I thought I was holding my camera the right way, but I guess I was a little tilted left or right. But one of the cool features of iOS 17 is, in addition to having the sort of very, very light on-screen grid, which has been there for a while, when you're holding your camera either in your portrait or in landscape mode, when you're pretty close to level, you will suddenly see in the middle of the screen this line. It's a level line.
Oh,
and
really?
It starts off white, but when you get to the point where it's perfectly flat, it will actually turn yellow. And once it's in that yellow part, you'll know using the gyroscopes inside the camera that it is perfectly level. And so if you take your picture right then, it's going to be a perfectly straight picture. It's a little guide, and if you don't like it, you can turn it on or off. If you go in the settings app to camera, composition, level, you can turn it on or off, but it's a tiny little feature. Okay. It doesn't really get in the way if you're not using it, but I sort of like it if you are using it. If you just want to frame that perfect picture and you want everything to be perfectly level, it's such a cool, it makes so much sense to have the level built into the camera. I almost am surprised that it hasn't been done years and years ago, because this is one of these things that once you look at it, you're like, oh, well, of course that makes sense. Right, so it's a nice new feature. I've been enjoying it, using it a little bit this week. I'll be enjoying using it even more with my brand new camera in the iPhone 15 Pro Max. But that is the
in
level
about 20
in the
minutes,
camera.
Right? You'll be
exactly.
Now, okay, so it's not on by default, I don't think, because I'm trying.
Oh, so maybe you have to go turn it on.
Wait,
okay,
there it comes.
There it is. It only comes when
I did not have it on. I went in
level.
Yeah. I went into camera, into settings, camera, and then there's a composition box there where I usually turn my grid off, right? And I think in this the picture I have on screen here, the grid is on, but you don't have to have the grid. You can just turn the level on, and wow,
it's really not very obtrusive.
Neat.
If you're worried that this is going to be like this big hunking line in the middle of your screen, no, it's incredibly tiny. It's not going to get in your way. It doesn't distract from taking a picture, but it does make it
that's so
easier
cool
to give a perfectly level picture. So I like it. I recommend that you try it.
If that's something, that is really neat. So many little Easter eggs. Well, not even Easter eggs. I mean, they're apparent. It's just we got to find them all, Jeff. This is crazy. Whew. Okay. Well, my friend, thank you for your patience, because if I was in your place, I would say, hey, can we record this podcast later? Because I want to play with my new iPhone 15 Max. Okay, Pro Max. Well, I'm very happy for you, my friend. I expect a full rundown next week so that we can talk a little bit more. I want to say thank you to SaneBox again for sponsoring us today. SaneBox.com/inthenews. Thanks to them. And thank you, Jeff, as always. We'll talk with you next week. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.